Welcome to our first training entitled Being a Bridge Builder, Mentoring a Guide for Job Partners. My name is Dr. LaWanda Cummings, and I'll be your guide today. I am a psychologist, a teacher, an interventionist, and probably most importantly for today's lesson, a mentoring specialist. We're going to cover 5 different areas in our lesson today, looking at how do we define mentoring. We'll look at conversations around diversity in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medical careers. We'll look at some effective mentoring practices based off the literature, and then have conversation about why relationship factors matter when we're doing trust building. And lastly, we'll talk about how do we model professionalism and integrity in the relationship as our mentees are following our example. Now, I do want to forewarn you that we will be doing a knowledge check at the end of the lesson, where we'll ask you a few questions just to see what you've learned or what you're thinking in regards to what is mentoring, why this particular support may be needed, and then some of the effective mentoring practices, purposes, and impacts. So I would invite you to make sure you look for the glowing light bulbs throughout the presentation that are going to indicate some bright ideas that we may need to focus on. So with that said, let's get started. Now, we're going to start by really defining the concept of mentoring because most of us have positive relationships that we may be a part of with family or friends or coworkers, but those positive relationships may not meet the definition of a mentoring relationship. Based off of the American Psychological Association, within a business context or workforce context, mentoring literally is a mentor that has a particular level of expertise that can help develop the career of a mentee. And a mentor often has 2 primary functions for the mentee. And the career related function establishes the mentor as a coach who provides advice to enhance the mentee's professional performance and development. So, if you can see by the definition, there's some clear lines that would make this distinguishable from maybe a really good friendship. But one of the things that I always warn mentors about is that even though mentoring may have aspects where we may support or coach or support our mentee in their development, mentoring is a lot of things, but it is not these things. If you have a mentee that is evidencing mental health issues, it's not time for us to pretend that we're a therapist. We want to be in a position to professionally and enable our mentees to be able to seek out professional support. So, mentoring is not therapy, it's not coaching, it's not passing the torch, and it's not primarily giving advice, even though we may participate in these particular behaviors. Mentoring, though, is about us providing direction and clarity for our mentees in regards to a way in which they need to go and or develop. It may encompass us providing training and support for them to be able to acquire new skills and abilities. It is definitely about being a cheerleader sometimes so that we can be a part of the positive motivation around their development. Many mentoring relationships will have a focus on particular goals, skills, or capacities that we want to see them gain or pursue. And definitely, mentoring has been affiliated and associated in the literature for greater levels of success. So, our bright idea for this section is really that helping a person grow and reach their potential is rewarding, not only for the mentee, but also for the mentor. Let's go to the next section where we're going to talk about diversity in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medical careers. When we think about these concepts of diversity, we really find out that diversity is actually our superpower. The NSF director, Dr. Panichathan, wrote inside Diversity in STEM Women, Minorities, and Persons with Disability report that diversity is America's unique advantage in science and technology. He further said, our global leadership depends upon diversity, leveraging different backgrounds, experiences, and points of view to bring unique insights to problem solving and discovery. And those ideas are a part of the national platform in regards to STEM initiatives. And in the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen a massive investment in educational programs, in retraining programs, because in 2012, there was a meeting at the White House where they actually projected a need for an additional 1 million STEM baccalaureates by 2022. And going back to look at that literature, the need actually was even more than the 1 million. And we know that science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medical areas have potential for immense growth. Already, when we look at the report by the US Department of Labor for 2023, there's an anticipated 11% growth that should be happening by 2031 in these areas, which is comparable to the 5% for non STEM areas. But also, when we start talking about diversity and inclusion, jobs in these areas and STEM reduce racial, gender, and class gaps in income as well as in prestigious employment opportunities. And in general, when we look at freshman women that are coming into a college, these women of color usually communicate intentions to major in STEM at about 32 or 33%. So there's a lot of interest. And you'll see here in the projections by the Department of Labor, you see that there's almost a double anticipated level of growth in the diverse fields in STEM occupations. So, this is a way in which a lot of times we can tell students or offer students a more sure path for careers and skills that will be in demand. So, we're in the business of what? Building safer bridges for these students and or professionals to move into success. So, like I stated before, a lot of money and effort has been gone into educational initiatives so that we can have persistence, so that we can have more individuals that are gaining degrees in these areas. And even if we look at one population, like Latino and Hispanic population, there has been a 30% increase in the last 10 years around pursuit of STEM degrees. But once you get the degree, once you get the learning, what do we do next? Well, what ends up happening is many of our students will move into different career areas, fields, firms, or companies, and they don't have the playbook in regards to how to be successful in those environments. If you see here in the picture in the middle, there's a little bit of a shark pit. There's a lack of a bridge for them to be able to cross over into success. And a lot of times, that pit, that place with a lack of knowledge, would be limited networks. It would be a lack of maybe support, even from the exterior, in regards to the pursuit of those particular skills or career aspirations. Sometimes it's going to be whether or not they've had adequate training or opportunity to acquire the skills that will give them an edge of marketability. It can sometimes be a lack of a plan around how they want to strategically place themselves or their skills so that they can actually gain success. But when we sit in the middle and create this bridge, we make it more likely that these students and or employees are going to experience career success. And so we know that mentoring initiatives serve a vital purpose in supporting and providing guidance and opportunities to help close the gaps, right? And promote equality. So, quality mentorship gives women and minorities access to career contacts, insider advice, and tailored development so that they're in a position to be high, have a higher level of marketability that they would have had without that support. So it's important that when we start talking about how do we get the win, how do we promote success within the workplace, just know that in taking on the role of a mentor, that participation in these types of programs can shift career trajectories that change individuals, but also families for generations. All right, let's go into number 4. We're going to look at effective mentoring practices. So it's important to think about these mentoring relationships as being different because they have a specific purpose, practice, and intended impact. So, the first recommendation I would make to anyone that's going to go into a mentoring situation is to create a list of mutual goals. This is really important because one, we're training our mentees on some of the ways in which we organize our ways of thinking and interacting and navigating spaces, but also so that we can think about the spaces around how do we bring accountability. So I've split this because this is purposeful, right? Into three different types of goals. One is job goals, one is professional goals, and one is future goals. Job goals are going to be task specific. What needs to be completed? What are the deliverables? What products need to be completed in this particular position? Professional goals are going to be looking at gains and skills pertinent to the field. It's going to look at what are the transferable skills. So there's some things that you don't need a degree for, like showing up to work on time or practicing communication with an office. And then also professional goals are around how do we facilitate greater knowledge inside the area and or field or specialization. Future goals are going to be looking at whether or not there's a greater understanding of the career progression and whether or not there's a plan for where it is that they want to go next. This also encompasses things like providing opportunities for additional training, skills, so that they can increase their marketability. And in that process, we want to establish some really clear expectations. I want you to think about this as if you're going into a different practice or going into a different kind of career and you have never met someone inside the area. So a lot of our STEM majors or our individuals that are in this mentoring space may not have family members that have done work in this area before, or may not have professionals that they've been around. And so there's a need for some explicit communication about what's expected. And some of the things that you need to be explicit about is the duties, the time commitment, reporting or communication schedule, and the expected spaces for growth and expertise development. And one of the ways that you help facilitate that is to create a schedule, because when there's a clear time for meeting, for project milestones and goal completion, there's a easing of anxieties about the steps that are required for work success. And it also creates an important space for discussion. And in that space, you can look at helping your mentee understand the linkages of their work to the larger initiative. You're in a position to have conversation about work plans for success so that you're in a position to make sure that they're meeting organizational goals. And then the other thing is that it allows you to have the conversation space to talk about progress, to talk about challenges, and to talk about successes. Now, within this particular initiative, the Workforce Fellows will have filled out a workforce agreement. And so you'll get a document that looks like this that will outline their agreement, their skills that they're going to acquire, and the work that they're saying that they're going to do. This will be a step forward for you to be able to utilize this resource as a way for you to gauge what success will look like for these individuals. So, our bright idea is that really effective mentoring practices like setting a plan, communication, clarifying goals and expectations align with 21st century skills that are needed for job success in any field. And a lot of these things do not require a degree or a specialization. Let's go to number 5. This is where we really talk about relationship factors because a part of mentoring is trust building. For many of these students and many of these professionals that are going into science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine, they don't know another person or have a family member. They may be first generation students. And so they're literally walking out into the unknown. And so the mentor then plays a critical role that you can feel like you're in danger, you're unsure, you're unclear. And so a good mentor knows how to listen and to ask the right question. And in the midst of asking those questions, growth can naturally occur when we make sure that communication is a priority. And it also allows us to make a clear assessment between when a mentee is just not doing what needs to be done, or if there's a gap in knowledge, capacity, or experience. And so when we think about this idea of trust, the Oxford Dictionary gives us a really clear definition. And it literally says that it is the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. One thing I always think about is how we have such trust every time we come into an office or we go to an event and we go over to a chair and we sit down. We don't check the legs, we don't check the seat because we trust that the chair is going to hold us up. And the reason why we have that trust is because we've sat in millions of chairs. We've taken a seat in millions of places. And so we have reliably experienced that the chairs are stable, that it is going to have the ability and the strength to hold us up. So I want you to be thinking about that when we talk about establishing trust with our mentees, that we may need to use some strategies. Upwork.com talks about 6 ways in which we can empower and create a trusting space. The first one is hold yourself accountable. That may mean sometimes I have to acknowledge that I didn't do something completely correct, but I can own whatever my failures or successes and be accountable. Number two is to advocate for your team. Be their advocate and their cheerleader. Number three, address problems openly and early. Don't let it fester. Go ahead and correct what is happening in that moment. Four, you want to encourage open communication and feedback so that we're also, as leaders, as supervisors, in a position to hear what is happening and to hear back. That is also a part of accountability. And then number five, make time for bonding. It's easier to trust people that we have spent time with. Again, with the chair analogy, we've been around them and they've had reliable and consistent ways in which they have functioned. Last thing is you want to empower your workers, empower individuals to be able to take initiative, to be innovative, and we should be people that can celebrate that. And inside this relationship, you want to just be in a position to be sincere. I'm always amazed at how little children are very clear when they do not like a person, right? And what we see inside the educational literature and in mentoring is that the top predictors of successful impact are usually going to be expectations of success and mastery. So I expect you to do well. I have confidence that you can do what it is that's being asked. And secondly, an ethic of care. Little children, old people, and pets can usually identify whether or not a person is there from a caring place and want them to be successful. The next thing is that you want to create a safe space and listen. You want to have an explicit plan around your communication and communication expectations in the mentoring relationships. Again, this is a great place for you to be able to create a schedule so that there can be an anticipated time for when we're going to get together, we're going to have the conversation, and they will have room to be able to tell you exactly where they are. So, our bright idea today is from the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America, where they say that trust is the foundation of any successful mentoring relationship. That trust enables you to communicate openly, give constructive feedback, and support each other's growth and development. So, let's go to the last section, which is modeling professionalism and integrity. Always ask mentors to take a moment and think about maybe any season in your life that may have been challenging. Maybe it was in school, maybe it was your first job, maybe it was the first time you had to stand up for yourself or ask for support. In those moments, what would have effective support look like? What would an effective mentoring situation have looked like? And I just encourage you that inside this mentoring process, to think about, how do I position myself to be the person that I needed when I was younger, when I first started my career. When we think about it from that perspective and the developmental focus of the mentoring relationship, it changes how we think about the ways in which we will engage, what type of information we will share, and what are going to be the healthy parameters around the relationship that we have. So, inside this process of professionalism, we have to model the behaviors that we want to see exhibited. You also want to be in a position to celebrate their wins. There are going to be times when there are struggles or gaps in understanding. But if we're in a position to observe growth and development and acknowledge it, then you're more likely to see more of the pro social or positive behavior in pursuing mastery in a particular area. As a professional, you also want to exhibit compassion. Understand that none of us came into our different areas as the expert immediately. Growth is a process, excellence is a process, and it's not an event. So, being in a position to encourage, again, individuals who may not see many people that look like them in the field, that even in the spaces of struggle or challenge, that we're in a position to be thinking about, how do I grow? How do I develop? How is that a part of the professional space and or development? You also always want to be in a position to lead by example. It's important when we're leaders to understand that leadership doesn't have to be complicated. It's actually pretty simple. When you're in a position to center your leadership and leadership patterns on what is best for those that you lead, teach, mentor, or develop, when they become the center of that conversation, we're then able to have a different kind of clarity over other decisions. And really, true leadership is more about the small things than the moments in which we may be able to stand before a crowd. So I want to share a picture. When you look at this picture, who's the leader here? Is it the guy that's standing on top of the mountain, so excited that he's made it? Or is it the guy that is holding out his hand and helping another person up? You want to be in a position to think about, what kind of leader do you want to be and who do you want to help these individuals to think of themselves as? A true leader is going to create opportunities for empowering and developing others, that they're going to create the brave spaces where maybe we can have the conversations that are not comfortable, but that are important. And that person is always going to be failing forward, right? Moving forward so that they're in a position to learn. But not only that the mentee will learn, but to understand that we're mutually learning in this space. And in all things inside the mentoring process, we wanted to be in a position to help our mentees develop the transferable skills, like growth mindset, like motivation, like being in a position to be your own cheerleader, because sometimes we have to do that, or being able to navigate or evaluate a situation so that we can position ourselves differently. Those transferable skills are valuable regardless of what career area you go in, and they're explicitly important in STEM. So, I'm going to end this by saying, let's dare to build bridges of possibility through effective mentoring processes. Thank you so very much. And as I stated before, it's time for the knowledge check. You made it to the end. I hope I didn't bore you to death. So what I want you to do is to use your phone to go ahead, or you can save the screen and keep this QR code, use your phone, and go ahead and answer those questions for us. It'll help us learn how to do this better and be able to communicate with us what are the specific needs that we covered or the things that may need more explication. And so we thank you for participating with us and knowing that this training came from the generous funding through the National Science Foundation and all of our partners. Have a great day.